When you think about politicians, you really think of the worst of the worst or the best of the best. People debate all the time who was the best prime minister of all time, who was the worst prime minister of all time. Basically put, it was the best would be Wilfrid Laurier, the worst would be Kim Campbell, in a sense. People would say who's the best and worst president ever was. The best president possibly was Reagan or even Lincoln. But the worst president possibly being, Nixon. Could be Nixon. It could be Harrison. He only lasted 30 days in office. Or maybe Ulysses S. Grant, or maybe the guy in the 1920s who spearheaded the Great Depression. But rarely do you get politics and Degrassi involved in anything. And the man you see is basically a politician who basically may have used his influence as mayor of Toronto. Now, of course, this is fake because we all know the real mayor of Toronto isn't this terrible, although he kind of looks like the current mayor of Toronto. But basically, he may have used his money, influence, and power to basically make Degrassi grovel under his feet. This is money talks, Degrassi walks, and then they'll cower because they're afraid of him. So this guy is Miles Hollingsworth II. And you're thinking to yourself, hang on, isn't he Miles Hollingsworth Sr. and his son is Jr.? Wrongo. Because this Miles, his father was also named Miles, so he's the second in the line. Miles Hollingsworth II has 3 kids. Miles, the third, we know who Miles is, Frankie, and Hunter. And all 3 of them basically have caused a lot of friction within Degrassi from seasons 13 to 18. Of course, for reference, seasons 15, 16, 17, 18 are technically next class. He has a wife, and basically things happen. So anyway, let's talk about the character history of Miles Hollingsworth II. In season 13, basically, he's not happy with Miles embarrassing him and all that. Everyone thinks he's all that. Basically, he sets himself up to be in good politics and all that. So he basically tells students who are registered to vote for him to be Toronto mayor and all that. So anyway, there's a lot of problems. He is running to be mayor of Toronto. However, Miles realizes that his dad is actually having an affair with his campaign manager and being very intimate. Although his wife already knows about this thing. How? So basically, yeah. Miles then realizes that he can't deal with his dad cheating on his mom with the campaign manager and basically throws a party. And Miles even tells his father that he knows he's cheating because that's why he threw the party, because he doesn't want his dad and all that. However, Miles Sr. says that he'll allow Miles to get out of the campaign if he doesn't throw any more stunts. And all that. Miles even helps gets Mr. Hollingsworth to talk to Sig and Tiny to get out of gang problems. And all that. So yeah. There's a lot of issues and all that. In season 14, he's still in the campaign mode and all that. However, he's not too happy about things. He gets mad at Miles for missing a campaign photo shoot, and basically Miles says that he was out with Tristan. And he basically says that he's in love with Tristan. But Miles Sr. basically says that his son, he doesn't believe his son is gay, saying it's ridiculous and all that. Anyway. So anyway, there's a lot of issues and all that to do with Miles Sr. And basically, he's still mayor and all that. But unfortunately, he has an angry streak towards Miles, in which Miles basically uses drugs to get the stress away from his father pushing things on him, especially with the fact that Miles said that he actually goes out with Tristan and all that. Now, I know that Mr. Hollingsworth is in the wrong, but basically, I mean, politicians don't like the fact that their kids probably could be gay and all that, because there are a lot of voters who are kind of homophobic and all that, and basically it swings votes the other way. So logically, he wants to put everything behind him. Unfortunately, he starts to have issues with his other kids too. But basically, yeah, he's a good father in front of Frankie and Hunter, but to Miles, he's a scumbag for cheating on his mom with a campaign manager and basically for pushing him off all that. Mr. Hollingsworth basically uses every trick in the book in his campaign promises to basically tell everyone that, even though Frankie potentially could be part of the Degrassi Nudes thing, that he basically will do everything in his power to make sure the Hollingsworth kids are clean as a whistle and all that, for his own purpose as being mayor and all that. So basically, what we find out is that, he does a campaign stop and he promises Degrassi a new wing at the school. Now, this is the part that gets me a little bit miffed, is that, hang on a minute, your kids go to this school. I guess it was automatic. He wanted Degrassi to have a new wing and all that. And it's like, aren't you throwing money at your child's school? Isn't that a bit of nepotism, if you will? That's what gets me going. That. And, there's two ways you can think of it. You can think of this as an unpopular opinion / hot take, but basically put, it's like, has Degrassi always been underfunded in a sense? Because, Mr. Hollingsworth promises that if he's elected mayor, he'll give Degrassi a new wing and all that. Doesn't Degrassi have enough room for students anyway? They're not like overcrowded or anything like that. And basically, is he going to help other schools, or is he basically just going to help Degrassi out? Could Degrassi have been basically underfunded on purpose because of all the drama from their school? I don't know. I just don't know about that. It could happen. You never know. But basically, yeah, with his 3 kids in that school and all that, it seems a little bit suspicious, don't you think? So basically, Miles still has the problems with his father and all that, despite the fact that his father basically used his influences to basically get Miles off a criminal charge and to get Maya off a criminal charge for perjury, for lying to the police to protect Miles. Remember, this is when Maya basically felt like Miles was going down the same road as Cam in season 14 and basically realizes that she can't lose another guy she likes because of suicide and all that. Still blaming herself for Cam's problems, even though Cam's problems were mostly his own doing and he didn't get help and all that. Although Simpson should be blamed too for not realizing things going on. But the problem with Simpson with that case is because maybe Simpson is just in principal mode and not in teacher mode as he was in season 4, but dealing with the Rick Murray situation, dealing with his superior basically screwing up with Rick. So basically put, yeah, that's a lot of problems. So basically, he seems to be a jerk and all that. Miles finally stands up to his dad and finally tells his siblings about how abusive his dad is and basically wants their mom to come pick him up from school. They don't want anything to do with the dad. And the dad said, you're going to ruin my campaign because of something petty like this. And they all stand tall against him. And he walks away. Despite everything that's gone on in the Degrassi fire and how maybe this is basically going to make Hollingsworth seem terrible and seem like a bad politician, he wins. Everyone's like, he won? After all that? Geez, Toronto, you don't know what you're doing. So basically, Hollingsworth is now mayor and all that. And we're going to be like, oh, I wonder what he's going to do as mayor and all that. Basically put, he does actually give some bravery awards to a few people during the summer. because they foiled the plot and all that. So anyway, um, you know, Mr. Hollingsworth doesn't want to see his kids and all that, but then Miles's mother actually seeing his dad again. It's like it's amazing. Miles is upset that that his mom's getting back together with his dad and all of that. Anyway, Miles Sr. tells Miles that I know things have been bad, but I want to earn back his trust. Miles says his mom should never let him back into their lives. All of that. Miles tries to figure out that, his dad basically hasn't changed. But no, that's fantastic. So yeah, this was amazing. That he kind of changed in a way. I guess being mayor, he decided to change his tone because he needs to set an example for not only his own family, but for the city of Toronto. Of course, in real life, Rob Ford kind of did mess up Toronto's image in a sense by his drunken stupor things and basically the comment about the counselor thinking that he likes to munch her pussy. I'm not making this shit up. Look it up if you have to. So basically put, he seems to be a terrible dad in a sense that basically he's all about politics and not about his kids and all that. I wonder how he deals with the fact that his son basically gets into deep trouble and all that. Like Miles gets in deep trouble. Frankie and her Degrassi news thing slash the racist poster, and Hunter with his probably being close to a school shooter type of person who basically is misogynistic and maybe very disturbed. All that. We don't know. But my opinions on this guy is basically he's a jerk. He's a big jerk who basically puts politics ahead of his family. I know some politicians do that too, in a way, but there are a lot of politicians that don't do that, that don't dare put politics ahead of family. All that. And it gets me thinking about this guy is like, you know, does he use his money and influence to sway things? And to me, and to a lot of people who are probably watching season 14 to 18, possibly, yeah. I mean, after all, like, he said he will make sure that Degrassi gets a new wing and all that. Does Degrassi really need to expand? Or maybe it was just saying that Degrassi is really underfunded. But the problem is, why are you picking that school up? What about the other schools in the Toronto District School Board, whatever you want to call it? Basically, is he just showing favoritism towards Degrassi because his three kids are there? Or maybe he's showing favoritism the fact that maybe Degrassi has been always underfunded. Nah, I completely doubt it. Degrassi being underfunded. I know that sometimes in the earlier versions of the show, like Next Generation era, that it's shown to be like underfunded. As Raj basically says that, budget cuts are ruining us. We're lucky to have a cafeteria. And basically, I can't get materials for my teachers and all that in season 4. And a lot of people said that's probably why he let Rick back, because Rick's GPA would probably bring them up a bit and basically would get them more funding. Possibly, possibly not. You don't know what the school board would be like. To me, it's always the question of basically his money and all that. He may use his money to basically influence things. I mean, like freaking Miles nearly burns down the school, like setting a campaign poster of his dad on fire and all that. And he's back after the break in a sense. Like they salvaged Degrassi, and that's when Snake is gone and Pillow comes in. It's like, why is he back at school? I thought he was supposed to go to boarding school and all that. That's the question. I mean, Hunter basically gets himself into trouble. He basically brings the gun to school. He's misogynistic. He basically wants to hurt Maya and all that. And he's back at school after his treatment. Like nothing else happens. All that. And what about Frankie, though, too? I mean, like, yeah, Frankie did wrong with a racist poster and basically didn't apologize properly and all that. Could Mr. Hollingsworth have given the fact that he may have used his money and influence to basically influence Degrassi to let Frankie go and all that, let Frankie off without trouble? Possibly. When you look at things, before I get to the main part, and that's basically why I think he uses his influence to help to make Degrassi grovel. Some stats and stuff from the fandom page. He actually ended up running for mayor and winning. He allows Miles to drink alcohol and smoke pot. He actually shares similarities with Peter's dad, Troy, and Craig's father, Albert, which is weird. He's one of 7 husbands that actually cheated on their wife. Mr. Ryan, I guess that's Caitlin's dad. Snake, Mr. Brooks, Robert Kerwin, who is Ashley's dad, Troy Stone, that being Peter's dad, and Hatzael's husband, former husband, and Randall Everett, who basically is Claire's dad. He favors Frankie and Hunter over Miles. He basically realized he thought that Miles and Tristan were dating just to annoy him, but basically he decides to allow the relationship to happen and all that. He was the first parent to verbally abuse their child as opposed to physical or sexual abuse, but he was physically abused and all that. So yeah. You know, Miles, well, Mr. Hollingsworth goes into therapy and is doing very well for himself, if you will. So yeah, he wasn't that bad. A lot of people said that basically there was a lot of animosity towards him and all that. So yeah, this is amazing and all that. It's amazing. A little trivia, but whatever. So anyway, as you could probably guess, that not too many people are happy with him. I mean, he does allow Miles to go to a writing academy. I thought it was writing as in writing for horses, but it's writing to London, and basically tells him he can have part of the trust fund. That Miles wasn't supposed to touch till he was 21, but basically he figures that Miles needs to get out of his dad's shadow and all that. Miles goes to Europe. He was supposed to go with Tristan, but basically there were problems, so Winston went with him. And a lot of people probably thought that Winston was probably gay for Miles and all that. No, Winston wanted to be with Goldie. So this comes to the part. It's basically how influence may have influenced Degrassi. So, as I said, that basically Miles had started a fire in Degrassi around the time that Degrassi Nudes was starting to get in its climax. And basically, Miles ends up burning a poster, and then it causes a fire and all that. And everyone says, wait a minute. So Miles basically caused arson, and now he's in trouble with the law. But he's not in trouble with the law. He's back at Degrassi. And there were rumors that he was going to be shipped off to boarding school for his troubles and all that. But I guess because, he was embarrassed about the fallout over him abusing Miles, and that Frankie and Hunter basically told him off too. He felt so compelled to be angry. He decides to try to get better and all that. I know that Miles doesn't really seem he's changed, but he does change for the better and all that. So yeah, it's amazing. Well, in a sense, you can't blame him. So Miles basically gets saved because I guess his father basically had the issue and basically said that, Miles deserves to be at Degrassi, despite the fact that he nearly burnt the school down and all that. So yeah, I think he was just trying to show that he actually does like Miles in a sense. But what about Frankie and the racist poster and all that? Did he show influence about that? Possibly. This is why I think he did. When you think about it, Frankie basically did that racist poster, and we all know it's bad. And drawing gorillas, well, black characters or gorillas are terrible because black culture. But when you look at the nitty gritty, you realize that, why is Frankie not getting in trouble for that? Like, she's off the volleyball team, but that's because the volleyball team kicked her to the curb. And basically, it's like, why is Frankie not getting any more punishments and all that? Even though Frankie's trying to fix the problem. Their anger towards Frankie could also, and Throwback Thursday, could also be anger towards Mr. Hollingsworth because maybe he's not doing a good job as mayor. Maybe he's just being a little bit favoritive with his kids, his 3 kids. I mean, like, I probably would have guessed that too. Maybe people were upset with how Mr. Hollingsworth is mayor of Toronto and not doing much to harmonize Toronto, that basically they're taking their aggressions out on Frankie. Now, of course, would it be different if Frankie was kicked off the team by the school in the sense and not by the actual volleyball team? As Snake said, that Frankie was kicked off the volleyball team, that's punishment enough. Yeah, but it was racist and all that. Of course, everyone had it in for Simpson that he refused to talk about racism and all that, despite the fact that there was damning evidence that there was something about it. Even Paige and Markle say something about it in Throwback Thursday. So basically, they figure that Frankie's just freaking privileged and all that, and is basically not being punished because her dad's mayor. They probably think that because her dad's mayor, and if the school did something to hurt Frankie, then Mr. Hollingsworth probably might tell Snake off and basically might cut funding or basically get Snake in trouble. It's probably because a lot of people probably think that Snake is groveling at Hollingsworth's feet and basically, the mayor. The apple doesn't fall from the tree. Although Frankie does realize she was seeing things through rose-colored glasses, it didn't convince everybody, but it did convince the volleyball team. But only because they needed to beat Northern Tech, and they beat them, and of course that bus crash happened. Some people would probably say that Mr. Hollingsworth used his influence to basically make sure Degrassi doesn't punish his daughter, or else they would be punished themselves. And what about Hunter? Like, freaking Hunter goes on a misogynistic streak, a gaming device basically hurt female characters, maybe sexually assaulted them, or basically made them look like terrible stuff. But basically, Hunter was disturbed, and he decides to bring a gun to the school. Thankfully, though, Miles stops him cold, and basically, Hunter goes into treatment. But then Hunter is back, even though that some of his characters basically didn't want him back for what he did. Could Mr. Hollingsworth have influenced the school to take Hunter back? Possibly. But, maybe Simpson thinks that Hunter deserved a second chance and all that. And, Hunter showed that he was decent and all that. Although a bad side of Hunter showed with Yale and all that. And a lot of people said that basically Hunter was wrong for being out with Yale and all that. And basically, he was being homophobic. Not completely. He liked girls. But, he didn't know, Yale didn't identify as a male or female. I think if Yale identified as a male, Hunter probably would have said, I don't want to date you, but we'll be friends. If it's female, perfect. But he's straight and all that. And, his friends didn't help him out. Basically, they teased Hunter about being friends with a genderqueer person because, Hunter might be queer too. And Hunter's upset over that. And, to me, it's like, Hunter is misogynistic like his dad. But I do think that Hunter does get a little bit better. But he just wanted girls. That's nothing wrong with that. But he just was confused by Yale's treatment of him. So basically, yeah, maybe he is an influencer. Maybe he does have Degrassi grovel at his feet. And Simpson's demeanor changed when he was principal for earlier on in his career. Basically, he was decent. He was relatable. I mean, yeah, he did overreact to Vegas Snake, but that was because the school board threatened to kick him to the curb, and Snake had to prove that he deserved to stay there. I'm surprised that the students didn't just basically say that Simpson was basically being forced to grovel at the school board's feet. All that. I know Mrs. Torres had a bone to pick with Simpson, and basically Simpson was trying to please the school board, but all that. But basically, Simpson had to also please the mayor of Toronto. And basically, maybe Hollingsworth used his influence to make Snake grovel and all that. Snake's character is not really that well when he becomes principal and all that. But, Maybe the school board's influencing him. Maybe Simpson just basically has a role to face as principal and all that. You know, it's kind of like Radich, though. Radich, as a teacher, was decent and all that, but when he became principal, it became unbearable. So yeah, maybe Hollingsworth does tell Degrassi that you play my way or you don't get any money and all that. And you know how Degrassi may be underfunded and all that. I don't know. It just sucks. And I just think that basically money talks and nobody walks away from it. That's all I've got to say about this guy. Thank you for watching. Have a good day.